Hey everybody, welcome to Jerry's Live. As always, I'm your host, Amy Gardner Dean, and we have a really fun little show for you. It's something that we did while we were in quarantine, filming from home, but we had so much fun with it and people seemed like they enjoyed it that I thought instead of it just being that art at home that we'd actually do it as an episode. So the episode is JL 160. We're going to be sketch and draw along, paint along postcards. So the little kit that we put online is like around $21. It's got one of the Lucas Aquarelle watercolor boxes, which is adorable. Comes with a little brush and everything. So 12 colors, really compact, fits right in a pocket. My phone is actually bigger than this. So it's a great little compact watercolor set. We've got some of the accurate waterproof drawing technical pens. The size that I like are the 0.5. It has enough line where it's easy to see, but not so much where it's kind of fat and, not very elegant if you're trying to make something kind of very fine-lined and finessed. Then in the set, next week we're going to actually be doing watercolor pencils, drawn paint along, and that will have a tin of our new Reflections postcards, which has more, but this set was kind of with a budget price in mind to try to keep it between $20 and $25. Strathmore's set of 15 watercolor postcards. So we're going to be using that today with this episode. We'll use the Reflections ones next week. And then I wasn't sure what we wanted to do. And when I was watering flowers very early this morning, as the sunlight came up, I realized I had some pretty roses and stuff. So I just grabbed a bunch of different things, and I think that I've decided we're going to do kind of the tangerine colored rose because that's just an easier thing to draw for a beginner because it's a nice tight rosebud. Some of the other leaves and flowers start getting I was concerned a little too crazy for people's comfort level trying this out with us. So we'll start that in a minute. This kit is really easy to find on our website. It's the jerrysartarama.com website. In the search bar, you're going to type in JL160. That's JL160. That's the keyword. Hit enter. That will take you to the list, just the 3 items to get this little set if it's something you're interested in. If not, this is a draw and paint along, right? So feel free to grab whatever you've got at hand and paint along, draw along with us, and enjoy yourself. Ideally, obviously, we're using watercolors and technical pens, but I'm not going to be a stickler for it. You can pick whatever you'd like and work with us. Now, the contest for this week, Katie brilliantly was miniatures. So since we were working on postcards, that's the ideal way to kind of kick that off. We'll have those contest winners at the end of this. I still feel like I'm at a news desk, by the way, Katie.
You're reporting the news on the winners.
Yes, right? Exactly. So let's get started because we want some time to have some fun with this. I'm going to take this extra leaflet off here just so it's not so large. What we're going to do is we're going to focus in nice and tight close up so we've got the flower, we've got the little postcard, we've got the little watercolor set. So it'll be easier for you guys to see kind of what we're drawing, and it'll give you the opportunity to draw and paint along a lot easier. We definitely want this side for this rose. I'm just going to put it on a white canvas so it's easier to kind of see the outline of it. And unfortunately, I'm seeing things from an angle here. You're seeing them from above, so I've got a monitor there. So that's what I'm going to be looking at to draw it. So if it seems weird that I'm staring at you while I'm actually drawing, it's not just you, it's the monitor. So that's what we'll be using. And we'll just work away. I guess I need to say real quick what colors come in this set, so if you've got colors at home, what we're working with if you want it to look similar. There's lemon yellow primary, there's cadmium yellow hue, there's cadmium red hue, there is magenta primary, there's cyan primary, which is your primary blue, ultramarine blue, which is going to be kind of a redder blue. So we've got good mixing colors. We've got a warm and cool yellow. We've got a warm and cool kind of versions of red. We've got warm and cool blue. What that means is if I say a warm yellow, that's going to be tinted more towards orange. Cooler one's going to be tinted more towards green. So obviously if I want to make a green with a yellow, I want to use that cooler yellow. That means the same thing for the reds, for the blues. So that's something when you're color mixing, and we've talked about it a lot on the show, but I know we got a lot of new viewers. So I will just be reiterating that as we go and explaining why I'm going to pick the colors that I'm picking. Then we've got a Viridian, which is a phthalo green. We've got an olive green, which is a chromium oxide green, a yellow ochre, an English red, which is kind of a brownish red, not quite burnt sienna, but it's not really red either. It's a nice color for kind of toning stuff down, gray earth tone color, a raw umber, and a Payne's gray. There is no black here. If we need something dark, we can make it ourselves, doing either something that's a chromatic black, which will be usually a red and a green primary, and we'll go from there. All right. So, perfect. Katie's already switched. She's a pro and on top of it. All right, I want to make sure this is in the view for you guys. Now, you can center the rose however you want. I'm probably going to make it go off the postcard a little bit because I like kind of a more dynamic composition, and I might kind of fudge the leaves a little here or there to make sure that happens. Stem is, we'll do the stem, but I think I'm going to do a little bit of shadow because I think that makes it look not like kind of a weird cardboard cutout looking drawing. The style drawing that we're going to use to do this is called a creative contour drawing. And we've had some drawing classes on the show. And what that is about worrying more about the contour of the edges of things, not this as a whole. I'm not going to sketch this in, because we're using a technical pen. So any mark you put down, you're going to leave. You're not going to be able to erase that up. So the nice thing about a creative contour drawing is you're looking at the area that you're drawing at that time and slowly putting the pieces of the rest of the item in together with that contour drawing to make that whole. So you're not doing it as kind of a whole complete drawing as you go. So, all right. So to do that, the rosebud obviously is the most important part of this kind of exercise. So I'm going to work on that first. And I've got the unique capability of, I'm wearing reading glasses to do this, but then I'm having to look up at the screen. So I'm not sure how detailed my contour drawing is going to be as a result, but we'll see what we can do about it. Okay. So just have your pen or a pencil or whatever. I'm going to start with this rosebud. I'm going to bring it up to the top. And my hand is going to get in the way. I know, so I'm going to try to keep it out of the way as much as possible, guys. That is another petal that's coming over there. All right, this is cupping and curving kind of up and around this. My rose is going to go off the page just slightly. Now we're not putting in any shading or anything like this at this point. We're just getting that contour drawing in. Okay, I'm going to come over here and work on the stem, or I guess the little leaves that kind of make up the outside edge of that rosebud before it blooms. It's got some kind of sawtooth leafing on it. I'm just kind of trying to decide as I go where that is. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just sketching, we're relaxing, we're having fun. Don't give yourself any judgment on this. You're just This is a good way to practice draw. This is a great way to actually just kind of, if you're out and about, if you're painting and drawing on site, if you're traveling, just to kind of make some kind of sketches of the things that are around you to practice with. Okay. All right. Yep, and I bumped the rose. And if you guys have larger paper, obviously you can crop however you would like. This isn't a one size fits all. You don't have to do it the same way. And as we've talked about with drawing, your eyes need to be on the subject as much as possible. So if you can do 90% of the time you're actually looking at the item, you're going to have a much more successful rendition of it than if you just kind of draw what you know. Draw what you see, not what you know. That stem's getting really fat. It's very different to draw looking across and down and not being up over the drawing, because I either usually tilt it like we do on the show, or I'm kind of standing over it. This is a weird sensation to be. That's okay. It's called adapting. This has a little curly on it there. All right. That's why we practice. Skipped right across the page. Which mistakes like that'll happen. It's fine, because once you start doing the watercolor, it won't be as noticeable. As you can see, these are things that I'm putting together, the different places on the rose as I go along. They're kind of fitting together. I'm drawing each little shape as its own entity, which is that creative contour. These aren't actually vein lines. It's places I'm seeing shadow that I'm kind of putting that as a note to myself for later when I go to do that watercolor. I will remember those are there because I've got those notes there. Since this will be darker, it'll be kind of hidden in that drawing. Let's see. Now this, not all roses have these kind of sawtooth edges. Some have a lot cleaner, smoother leaves. This one just has that kind of little difference. So If you feel comfortable putting that on, great. If you don't, it's entirely up to you. And you can see I have missed where this tucks in under that, but it's not. We're just getting kind of the essence of the rose. And me looking away as I drew that, was not looking at the drawing. So you can see that I did not get that put in there. All right. So we pretty much have our rose there. This comes up over here a little bit more. What I'm going to do is just add another kind of petal behind it, just so it looks a little bit smoother. Shadowing. I guess we did put shadow in that other one, didn't we, Katie, when we did it? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a little bit of kind of small cross hatching, just to kind of help with the shadow where I want this to be. Try not to bump the rose because I don't want anybody who's still working on the drawing to have issues with it. Just putting a little bit down the stem to kind of help round that out when it's being painted. Now, if this was larger, I would probably be more worried about this hatching actually being rounded edge to kind of give that contour of the roundness of the stem. But since these are so little, it's not. And the paint will help kind of make that read more dimensionally. It's not as important. This part's pretty light, so I think we're going to leave that as is. That is as well. There's a little bit. Gonna just do in there since that's kind of shadowed behind the flower. Whoop. Okay. These leaves, let's go ahead and add a little bit of shadow. The stem's got a pretty good shadow too about there, so we're gonna kind of So I'm just putting a little bit of hatching in a few places just to kind of help us see some of our form. I'm not going to do it where the shadow is going to go because I want those to be good and soft. I think that's probably good. It's enough where everybody can see it easily, and we can work from there. All right, yes.
I had one question.
Sure.
How would that pen compare to like a micron? And what size are you using?
It's the, actually, I think I put a 0.5 and a 0.3 in the kits. I picked up the 0.3, actually, so that's why it's a lot lighter looking, which I didn't mean to. I showed the 5, and then I picked up the 3, and I've forgotten that I put 2 in. Well, that's okay, because working small, you know, and some people want really super fine light lines, and some people do want to put a kind of a ghosted in drawing in pencil, so if they have any problems, they can erase and then go over it with the pen and then erase the pencil marks. Totally fine. Always with any technical pen, make sure that you let the pen dry before you actually erase it, because right away it's not always, it takes a little bit to set. So something to remember. So that's what we're using. Very similar to micron. The color is just a little bit kind of, I guess, more sepia. It's got just a little bit of a more natural color, where micron can be a little glaringly black.
Stark.
Yeah, so if you're doing, especially with things like this, florals, landscapes, things like that, where you don't have a lot of natural black, these are actually a very nice choice for that, because it's a more kind of natural color than that just, you know, comic book outline black that you tend to get with the micron. If that's something that you notice and it bothers you. Some people it does, some people it doesn't, but that's, and these are what, half the price of a micron. So that's also another nice thing, with pretty much the same ink volume, same tip feel and everything. So it's a good value pen. Plus, I don't think we sell open stock microns other than in the store. I think you have to buy a box of 12 where you can get these singly open stock. So that's another thing to why these are a great deal for this kind of thing. Not that people don't buy them by the dozen, but you know, you only need
so many of them.
one to carry around.
There's like 2 in my purse, a handful in my
Yeah,
desk.
you don't even want to know how many I've got.
So much.
You don't want to know how many I've got. Okay. So first, I think we're going to work on, I don't know. I want to work on all of it at the same time. I probably will, because you know that's how I roll. Okay. We're going to work on the stem and kind of like right up in here on the rose, and kind of in this yellow area first, because we'll kind of work with yellow. Let's grab the cadmium. I'm going to flip this over so I've got the colors. So if anybody got this set it up so you can see which one I'm talking about. Yeah, this is their little Aquarelle Studio, which isn't their 1862 professional, but I'm here to tell you this thing packs a powerful punch for pigment, doesn't it, Katie? Mm-hmm. It was as we used it for the set for the at-home thing, I could not even believe
shockingly so, yeah,
how pretty the colors were. So
such a great value.
Yeah. So nice, vibrant yellow right there. I'm just gonna kind of ghost that on, putting a little more down here. And with, sorry, I moved it a little bit. With it being a pan that you can, in a student or artist grade pan, not the professional quality pan, to grab that much color with just a couple swipes is also really nice. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of water, since that's pretty harsh, and thin it, so I can kind of pull that color across here, but not have it quite that same saturation. Because we're going to go back in with some kind of more of an orange. I want it to be there under it, but I don't want it to be quite that saturated. Okay. So we've got that on there. Now we're going to work on kind of this whole little kind of stem assembly that peels back off the rosebud. We're going to use that more that lemon yellow, that's that greener yellow. And I'm going to add a tiny, tiny touch of, I'm going to show you 2 things here. Viridian's very blue-green. We don't want that there. That is not blue-green up in here. That is That we can start using a little bit in the leaves, but these leaves actually have some red undertones, so we may not even want to use them then. We're going to use that chromium olive green. See how that's a much more kind of neutral, natural green. Putting just a little bit in there because I don't want it to be too bright. Be careful kind of painting along the edge of what you've got that's already wet there, because you don't want it to kind of travel into each other. And we're going to be kind of pushing that as we go with this, because this is a demo that we are doing all at one time. We don't have a hairdryer out. And the nice thing about this brush is this, actually, for being a teeny tiny little brush, can hold a lot. It's a nice little synthetic kind of Teflon. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more of that green, and I'm putting it in as we get a little bit further down the line for this, because I don't want it to be too, like, really green right up close, because you can see how kind of pale. It's almost like a silvery gray, silvery green gray.
Quick question?
Yes.
Actually, two.
Sure.
Are watercolors in general archival?
Pigments in the watercolors will be archival. Watercolor as a medium, it tends to not be as archival as, depending on the pigment that's used and the light fastness and the manufacturer, what types of additives they add in it, tends to not be, because you don't have the resin in the acrylic, okay, the acrylic medium, and you don't have the oil in the oil paint to help protect that pigment from fading. Watercolor is pigment, a little bit of gum arabic, maybe some other filler, maybe a tiny little bit of honey. It becomes very, obviously, watery. You put it on the paper and everything else disappears, right? So you're not leaving a lot in between just paper and pigment to protect that little skim of pigment. And I'm not taking this, it's not like a marker or a paint where it's heavy and there's a thick film. This is just a little bit of pigment, almost like a stain, right? With water. So that's something that, that when you buy watercolors, you need to check the light fastness of those colors that you're buying, especially with ones like the pinks, the opera red and opera pink and stuff like that, because those are not light fast pigments typically. Okay, just grabbed a little bit more of that than I was expecting. Did that answer the question? Was that the
and then
kind of gist?
They're having a discussion about student versus professional versus artist grades. They're wondering if these are student grade technically.
These are I think they did have one student grade under this. That was Tertia, wasn't it?
But they don't act like it.
No, these are not. These are student grade priced, but they act more like what the difference between Lucas Studio in any of their mediums and their professional grade is that it's the same pigments that they're using to make the 1862. They're taking out the cobalts, cadmiums, all those colors that are much more expensive, that are mined, that can be toxic, and there's probably slightly less of the pigment in it, okay? That's the biggest difference, because I've got that 1862 kit, and these colors are just as vibrant as the work that we've done with the 1862. Don't you feel like, Katie?
Yeah, those pack a punch.
Yeah.
Especially for that price point, man.
Oh, yeah.
And then, the next question is, are artist and professional grades the same thing?
It used to just be called artist grade, and that meant that it was professional, but it's not. Really, professional is going to be your higher echelon, the ones with multiple series, the ones where there's just a ton of pigment in it. The problem is it's kind of like, it's not something that's regulated, okay? It's not like it has to have so many grams of pigment per, pan or something like that, where it's something somebody can say, this is our version of a professional paint. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the top quality professional, right? There's lots of brands that are out there that have gone by the wayside over the years because their professional was not professional compared to other manufacturers. So professional grade should be using almost all, pigments with good, very good, excellent light fastness. The ones that may be lower rated are just ones that maybe are really traditional pigments that people love and just don't want to get rid of, and they know the risks that are involved with them. But they're not going to have a lot of, things that are fugitive or fluorescents or things like that in them, because those are not professional. Okay, I'm just kind of trying to get some green on this. We're going to come back and we're going to darken it. Actually, I think I might start darkening it some as we go. So this has a red undertone in the sleeve. I don't know if does that pick up on your monitor, Katie? Mm-hmm. Magenta, I'm going to show you guys this. I'm going to put it over here because I don't want to accidentally.
Where that shadow is, where
okay,
the petals beat
so see this one. Look at how much that pulls up right from that. That is too pinky purple, right? See it down by the JL 160. This cad red is going to be very bright red, okay? And this is why you swatch your paints, because this is something, see, that's a neutral, that's a little bit more, the English red is typically a red oxide base. That's going to be more opaque, so you can use it to add to things, but you don't want to paint it straight out, like super thick, because it's going to be, unless you're wanting it to be more opaque. I'm going to add a little bit of that, because that's kind of a nice brownish red. See how that starts darkening that? That made a big difference in darkening it. I'm going to add a little bit more green and a little bit more of that. That is really close to that color on that leaf. So that's what I'm going to use to start really coming into this. Ooh, yeah. See, look at how nice. That is like super powerful. I'm going to actually thin that just a touch. And I can kind of pull up from there. Definitely has a little bit more of that kind of nice brownish green quality. Put a little bit more of the green in here for some of these areas that have a little bit more light. Now, Payne's Gray, you could kind of gray it down, but Payne's Gray is more blue, so it's cooler. If you've never used that, I'm going to put that up here. See how blue that is? It's a really nice blue-gray, but it is very blue, which is what Payne's Gray should be in a watercolor. Great for seascapes and stuff like that. That will be perfect for the shadows, because this is so warm. We want to use cools for the shadows, because that will help make that shadow drop away and make the warmth really pop forward. So we're not going to actually add that into our leaf. We're just going to stick with this. We're going to do these leaves, and then we're going to pop back up to our flower bud again. Just I'm trying to kind of give it some dry time to wait for just a second.
We have a couple people asking if they need to varnish it or what they need to do to be able to send it through the mail.
Yeah, I would say definitely, if you're going to send it through the mail, get like a spray varnish, like a Solivar or something like that. That's got some UV protection, and it's a mineral spirit based. Something like Workable Fixative might work, but it's not guaranteed. Also, if you're sending it through the mail where they're not going to make this like an art piece later, you just want it to show up nicely through the mail. If I mean, you could even laminate a side. I mean, I've done that before for business cards. You can see that I got magenta on my finger, and I've already put it into my postcard.
We also have the crystal seal bags that come in the smaller sizes too, that you can keep them closed.
Don't know if those can go through the mail because of the plastic. Can they? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be even better.
We tested it.
That would be better because that would.
You can attach the stamp to it.
Yep.
And when they attach the label to it, it doesn't ruin the artwork.
Nice.
It ruins the bag.
No, that's perfect. Then I just didn't know if it was too slick to go through with the equipment. That's
it works. We tested it.
Awesome. Even better. Okay, this raw umber, we're going to add a little bit of raw umber to kind of darken this. Raw umber is kind of a nice darker brown pigment, just to kind of darken our shadows. Bring the shadow down down our stem here. I'm finding I'm having problems talking and working. That was a little dark. We'll pull some of that. Notice if I get it dark, all I'm doing is adding a little bit of water and then kind of pushing it. That will lighten it without you having to freak out or use a sponge or any of those types of things. It's an easy way to lighten that some. Just making these a little bit. Making it dark right by that bud to help kind of set it off. Need more just the straight green on that one. There's the only thing that's hard to manage is this picks up so much paint. You have to kind of, which is watercolor, you can always take the sponge and take some of it off your palette, but it picks up, compared to most pan sets, picks up way more than you're expecting. So it's like, whoa, more of that color than I wanted.
It's one of those little kits that will keep surprising you and keep surprising you.
And I've got one that we did the one at home with that I've been carrying with me. I still have so much paint. I cannot even believe how much paint is still left in that thing with being used pretty consistently. Green that up. It's starting to look a little brown. Now with this, I'm just kind of working wet and wet, pulling some of the colors into each other while I'm have it wet, just to kind of and I'm going to add a little bit more green in there. Okay, all right, let's take a break for a minute and we'll go over to our flower. All right, so that red looks pretty much more like this red here that we've got going on. And we may take some of this yellow and lighten. So I'm going to just tap a little bit of that in. Yep, that picked up a big bit of pigment, more than I want. That looks really good, actually. All right, so we'll start adding some of this orange in here. Needs to be a little bit drier brush application. I want to keep that yellow right here at the bottom, so I'm going to kind of come down that edge. Paper's just still a little wet. I'm going to leave that just like that. All right. Trying to kind of play between a... It's good to have a paper towel. For some reason, I like to use pants for watercolor and get the excess off. I don't know why. I just always have. Don't want to use the dress. Picking up little touches. The paper was already wet from me adding it on, and I'm just adding little touches where I can control it just that little bit easier. Now in here there's a shadow. How am I going to get that shadow in the rose there without it being kind of, I mean, I can't go any darker with this red, right? I mean, I can go a little bit darker and just use straight red, but it's not really a red rose, right? So I can add a little bit of that. But see, that starts making it bright. I don't want it to be so crazy bright. So what do? This English red is going to look more like kind of an orange and shadow. Make sure the brush is super dry. See how that little bit kind of helps make that read as a darker color, but without being too dark. Okay, so let's let this dry because I can feel that the paper is really saturated right now. I don't want to go much further with that. So let's come to the shadow on the rose. Oh, bad thing about a little tiny brush is it disappears. Huh?
Do you need a hairdryer?
No.
It's okay.
It's okay. We'll work our way. Let me see if I can get rid of this magenta that I got on here. Scrubbing that. All right, so our magenta piece is gone. Just gently scrubbed that edge and then lifted the color enough and then added a little extra water so that I could just kind of flick the color off the paper. So there's a big piece of magenta dried, that's gone. All right, so with the shadow, I really like that Payne's Gray. So I'm gonna wet that down a little bit more. And I'm going to draw my shadow for the rose. Now I want this to be super light for the time being. I don't want it to get heavy. We can go back in and make some areas a little bit heavier. And you guys probably see the same thing I do where there's kind of some multiple light sources for that shadow. So and where the rose is closer, obviously the cast shadow is going to be much heavier, like this right in here. It's pretty much touching the edge of that. So that shadow is a lot darker. And the same for in here, it's casting a much wider area of shadow. The other places where it's not touching is going to be much lighter. So you don't want to make your shadow all one color, one value, because then it's going to read really weird and kind of cartoony. Which, especially with us already having a you know, technical pen outline drawing, it tends to want to do that, you know, read as a more kind of harder edged illustration anyway. Shadow goes on this outside edge. Just shoot if you've got any questions while we're doing this, Katie. I know that there's probably some that are going to come up, and just go ahead and interrupt if you need to.
Okay. Everybody's just saying, ooh, right now.
Anywhere you want that to be softer and not have a hard edge, rinse it in the water and kind of paint back into it. Kind of rinse the brush, pull the excess out, and you can kind of softly pick up that edge of the line and soften something like that was looking a little too hard, as was that. So just softening it that little bit kind of gets rid of that. Okay, so we've got some, let's pull on this edge. Although I do like a little bit harder edges in some places, just the variation's kind of nice, you know? Now that leaf is lifting up a lot higher. It's because it's coming up towards you, the viewers, so we don't need to make a hard edge right there. The shadow is more down here. The higher it gets, the more it's going to disappear, okay? So don't make that shadow all the way where it looks like it's flat, because it's actually kind of coming up at you. This one's much harder. Right back here. That one's okay to make nice and hard like that. Okay, and we've got a little bit of softer one over here. Being very careful to not get that shadow in our orange at all. We don't want to. Again, we've got some different kind of unique shadows because we are in a studio and we've got light coming from some different angles, so added a tiny little bit of green to that just to kind of soften it. Okay, let's see, is there anywhere else I want to change on the shadow real quick? Put a little bit more in some of these darker areas. Part here is still really wet, so anything I add is going to kind of spread out. So kind of dry brush a little darker stuff right in there. Okay. Let's put a little bit more down here. Okay. Work a little bit more on that rose. It looks like it's starting to dry a little up there, so let's kind of give it a little bit more brightness. I'm gonna give that a little more pop. Is that looking pretty vibrant? I know my screen, the colors are, the kind of value's a little weird. Is that a little better? All right.
Yeah, you can see it pretty good. I actually really like that Payne's gray.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Pretty color.
Well, and it's nice because it's got that bluer color, and then we've got the warmer colors of kind of that red and green. Now this value is very dark. If this is really blue, try to add just a little bit of that in. And see, that kind of helps a little. Let's give that a shot. Just with watercolor, it's always, you know, you never get those super dark darks like you can with, ooh, look at that. That's nice. Okay, so I added a little Viridian into that olive green and raw umber and English red mix. And look at how nice and dark that is. I need to be real careful so it doesn't get in my Payne's gray. As I say that, it just went into the shadow in one area, but that's not the worst thing that could happen. Sometimes I kind of like a little bit of, where you get that little bit of kind of color that escapes and runs away and blooms. Sometimes that unplanned nature to it. It's kind of pretty. All right, we'll just add a little. Just want this to be a little bit darker. You'll see that I got kind of blue right there. There we go. Paper still got a little bit of moisture to it, so I'm kind of able to, you guys can't probably hear the scrubbing, I'm kind of scrubbing it in. And I'm picking it up a little more wet. Okay, that's good. That's nice. Nice, rich, a little bit deeper color. That makes that leaf fall back behind this one. And in turn, let's kind of do this edge. There. See how that kind of grounds that leaf a little bit? Let's take that, come up here. We've got this little bit right here. Darkening real carefully right along that stem. That'll help kind of 3D. Okay, and not with that color, but with a little bit of the more that straight chromium or olive. I'm going to go right along the edge of the other side. Just kind of tracing along. That'll help that 3D pop. This one is a little bit, I'm going to use just that straight so that this doesn't get hidden in these, even though it is kind of darker and hidden. I want this to play that little bit truer green. Okay. All right, let's go back to the flower real quick. The bud. Yes. Oh yes, we need those. A little bit more of this while she's bringing me the winners. Thank you. Okay, dry brush this in. That means pull out the moisture and just pick up the little bit of color. See how much vibrancy that gives. Then as soon as this is completely dry, and I'm saying completely, go in and I can see a little bit of veining. You can see some of the veining there. I would take that with just a little bit of this this kind of brighter red, and with a little bit of the English red, and I would, with the tiny point, just put a couple little kind of contours right along there, kind of right in this area here. Okay, but that needs to be like dry, like go away, have a glass of wine, unloaded the dishwasher or something, and then come back to it. Don't do it. Don't do it right now. Okay. There we go. All right, that kind of helps that fall away. And are there any last questions before we do the winners?
Somebody was asking if the palette box itself is metal or plastic.
It is plastic. It is not metal. Metal, just cases alone for metal cases will typically be at least $30 to $40 for a pan set. Now the beauty of this is, and we did with not this particular box, but with the first generation one that they had, that didn't have kind of this, it wasn't quite a slim line, was it, Katie? It was bigger.
Yeah.
Is that these pans come out. So for the price that this box is, if you don't want the, the studio grade, you want the 1862 professional grade, you can make your own custom kit with this. Or if you have other tube watercolors already that you own, just get the little empty half pans. You can make your own custom set for this. You're not, just because these are the colors that come with this box, doesn't mean you're stuck with it. You can't get a palette box this cheap to put your own custom ones in. So and yes, it's not metal, but guess what? It's super light. It's not going to dent. I've dropped mine at home, I don't even know how many times, or taking it in and out of my pocket or my purse or whatever. And it's super durable.
Yeah, I throw mine in my purse.
So this is I mean, kind of one of the neatest little
I actually like
pan
that it
sets
has
that's
the
made.
little individual wells for the pans instead of like
Yes.
clipping them in. They're very sturdy.
Yes, no, they stick in really well, but they are removable. And this area you could do like a larger wash. I think that's what the reasoning was behind that. If you wanted to make a bigger, obviously you can't make as much area for a larger, wash. Like if we wanted to go behind this and do it all, blue or something like that, you'd either have to be really creative with kind of edges that dry and being able to blend back into them, or you could make a wash in this. It's a pretty decent sized divot that would give you enough water to do that little postcard. So it's very thoughtfully designed, and that brush fits in there without jamming. Keep the tip for it. Once your brush is dry and clean, you can put it back on it. You can put it in there, and that brush will last for forever as long as you keep that so that it's not sliding back and forth. So, all right. Well, awesome. Hopefully everybody had a little bit of fun, and you can go back and watch if you want to do this. You watched it this time, you didn't have the materials. You can get them. This lives here for forever, which terrifies me sometimes. But you can go back and you can actually do this at a different time. Redo it, do it for the first time if you just watched with us. It gives you the option to kind of play all over again. So you guys take care. Good night.